and I guess like part of the risk of doing that branding exercise at the beginning and then trying to like grow from there is that the economy is changing. There's changing landscapes throughout the whole world around HR, around technology. Like there's so many changes all the time, right? So like how would you build a brand that will hold up over the long term, right? Like a brand that will stay relevant and adaptive over the long term.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. Again, locally in Ottawa, we had the National Arts Centre. For
Okay.
example, had an incredibly beautiful Canadian iconic logo. It was in international branding books on that logo,
Hmm.
and they redesigned it
Hmm.
because they felt in their statement they felt that it needed to be modernized, it needed to be more relevant. And that's where it comes down to what you just talked about is the longevity of a logo. That older logo could have gone on forever. The logo itself wasn't the problem. It's how they were using the logo that was the problem. If they
Interesting.
wanted to be more relevant and modern, you change the way that logo is used. Okay,
Hmm.
you can't use that as a platform for building a new brand when you look at a brand like Coke,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's still it's been refined and cleaned up, but it's still that scripty, Coca Cola. Um,
Hmm.
and but it's changed how they've used it. A lot of times you don't see the whole logo; you see the curves and the elements of it because we know
Hmm.
it, right? But they didn't change the logo.
Interesting.
And so that's something that's really important is when you've got a good, solid, confident logo and brand moving forward. Well, let's put it this way: your brand is a conversation. The logo is the punctuation at the end of that conversation.
Hmm.
So if you're moving forward in time and things have changed, you just adjust that conversation, but the punctuation stays the same. So
Hmm.
you can change up, you can modify your colors to a certain degree.
Hmm.
The way you're talking, again, depending on how things change. But the logo remains the same, right?
Hmm.
Use maybe it's just parts of it, or it's blown up large, or there's lots of things that you can do if your logo is built correctly at the beginning.
Right. If it's built on the right foundation, then it can change over time that way.
Apple,
Interesting.
Apple,
Okay. And
another example, right? Again,
yeah,
going back
I.
to Apple, but
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess like one of the things I'd seen too. There's some businesses that are just in such saturated marketplaces, right? So there might be in super competitive industries. Let's say as a real estate agent or a mortgage broker, or I don't know, like there's a bunch of other industries that are very very competitive. You've talked about like colors and kind of like slogans or values, but I guess like how do you suggest that they stand out in such a saturated marketplace, right? Like, is it about using like a unique color that no other person is using so that it's like, oh yeah, that color is that person? Or is there like what really can help differentiate in a saturated market?
so if we, and again, this will be case by case, but if we look at the real estate industry, for example, we're driving down the street. We are going to see
Mm-hmm.
red and white signs, and we're going to see red, white, and blue signs.
Hmm.
Seems to be the industry standard with Remax, etc. Those are the key colors. So if you suddenly go with a bright orange, you know, with the standard sort of statements on it, and that will get noticed because people are like, oh, wait a minute, what's that sign? I'm used to seeing these colors and these
Right.
sort of format when I'm driving down the street, but suddenly I see that, it's like that you're going to stop, even if you're not buying a house. You're going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Is it a construct? Like what's going on? So it's little disruptions like that, but again, it's industry dependent.
Interesting.
Observation, like I said earlier, know your competition. So if you're a real estate agent, okay, why are people going to hire you? Two reasons. One is you've got good backing. Okay, you got a big company behind you, and secondly, and more importantly, you. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you are unique. Nobody else selling houses out there are you. So that's what's gonna get the bright orange is gonna get them to be curious and look you up. Your interaction with them is gonna keep them. I feel
Right.
trusted with them. Same with accountants, same with lawyers. You've got to
Yeah.
feel right with that person, but you've got to
Yeah.
get to that person first. And that's through
Mm.
sort of disruptions, right? And it might be statements. I'm just using color as an example, but it might be in certain statements. Um, I know I worked with a real estate agent at one point, and the key factor for us was they specialized in a certain neighborhood,
Right.
but they weren't telling people that, right?
Mm.
So if they come out in their market and say, we specialize in Westboro, for example,
Hmm.
we live in Westboro and that's our space. When you start saying that, well, when somebody wants to sell their house, who do you want to sell? Who do you want to sell your house, right? It's like somebody that knows the neighborhood, that lives there, that knows all of this stuff. There's a trust.
Hmm. Interesting. No, that's cool. And I guess like a lot of the small business owners that we talk to are, they don't have the money to kind of like just put huge amounts towards their budgeting or to kind of try and be, I guess, the most unique, or at least not to say they don't have the money, but it's hard to get away from their money, right? So it's hard for them to actually spend that money unless they can find a good ROI, or at least track that there's a good return on investment. And so how do you kind of show that value to people, like not just like here's an end product, but how do you showcase this is the value that's been added to your business
Yeah.
because of the work that you did, because of the money that you spent?
So there's a few things. First thing is the business owners have to look beyond cost, and I don't mean spend whatever. What I mean is don't look at your brand as a bottom line cost.